I hope we're all well. Welcome to another rendition of the Hangout on Air series brought to you by Google Partners. I'm Richie Reynolds. I'm an agency development manager on the UK agency team.
My name's Huey Zulueta. I'm an agency account strategist also in the UK.
So today we're here to talk about AdWords Smart Bidding. Look, what does that encompass? It really does come under the whole kind of bracket of automation, and what we're going to be doing is a three-part series to really demystify what automation means from a marketeer standpoint. So the first element is going to be on bidding, which we're going to go through today. In a couple of weeks' time, we're going to understand how automation impacts ads, the copy, and where that's dynamic search ads and the targeting. And then finally, I think at the end of the month, we're going to be having a look how automation is impacting onto the display side of things, which is there's a few eagerly anticipated product changes which we're going to be excited to bring to you. So look, guys, today what we're going to be discussing, what we want you to kind of keep in mind throughout is, okay, automation regards bidding. The two things we really want you to just hammer home is performance and efficiency. So automation allows real-time personalization at scales with AdWords. So that allows you to kind of achieve performances which are unattainable through, I suppose, manual strategies. And then the efficiency side, like you guys with the automation taken into consideration and kind of eating into a lot of the labor-intensive tasks, we really want you guys to try and think of what you do with that recycle time, with that recycle efforts to ultimately improve your account.
Yeah, completely. And I think Richie, you mentioned that automation. Why now? Why are we talking about automation in 2017? And I think one of the big things we want to get across to you today is that in the past 18 months, there's been a step change. There's been a shift in technology, algorithmically. Machine learning is obviously a big buzzword in the industry, but that's come into all of Google's different suite of products. And it's here for you now as marketeers and advertisers. And a graph I want to share, which I find really interesting, is this is a Google internal graph of the projects we use on machine learning and which hinder and harness machine learning. And so you can see here that actually it's only really in the past 18 months possibly that there's been this uptake within Google of machine learning, and that now it's pretty much exponential. All our teams, one way or another, will use this technology. And so where we come to with that is back in October, Sundar Pichai, our CEO, stands up at the hardware conference in October and says, we're no longer mobile first. That's here to stay. That's in everything we do. That's a trend that we're not seeing going away. But product-wise, our priorities have shifted. We're now AI first, artificial intelligence first, everything we do. And so that's now seeping into the whole suite of products. One of the examples I really love is about our data centers. Cooling them is often one of the biggest costs they have, that data center team. But for using the DeepMind algorithm, the machine learning algorithm that beat Lee Sedol, the AlphaGo, the Go player, for using that technology, we managed to cut the cost, the energy cost in our data center by 40% in just a matter of weeks. And so that's something we had data scientists working on for years. And suddenly you just apply this compute technology and immediately massive performance, massive efficiency gains. And so I mentioned there the whole suite of products, whether you use Google Photos, you're in Gmail, in your Drive, YouTube, Translate, it's all going to be there. It's in everything we do.
And I think the interesting aspect is to think, okay, all well and good, what does that mean to us? How does this overspill into our day-to-day? And I think there's a really interesting study done by BCG, and essentially says that 80% of advertiser time is spent on low-value tasks. And like what we, I suppose, are kind of challenging you guys is this the most effective use of your time? And a nice way to break that out is by days of the week. So by using those numbers, it essentially means that only one day of the week is spent on what is valued as important. So say in our case, whether it be, say, strategy day, one day strategy. And this is, so what automation does, what machine learning does is, as I said, free up that time. It takes a lot of those labor intensive tasks away. Again, so you can use more of that. So I think we were discussing in terms of the next kind of couple of months is the amount of bank holidays, not for the holidays that we're planning around them, but in terms of from an advertiser's perspective.
Yeah, completely. If you were able to free up a bit of time, why don't we get a seasonal strategy in place? 5 bank holidays in the next couple of months. Let's go on to Google Trends. let's look at the insights there. Let's go on to Google Consumer Barometer, all free tools for you to use, and try and find, right, how am I going to craft a winning strategy over those bank holiday weekends?
Yeah. And generally, like there's going to be loads of examples of that as well. More competitor analysis, trial more things. Essentially what automation will do, as well as the superior performance, but the efficiency side is giving you time back to put you on the front foot. So you guys aren't reactively, I suppose, answering and acting, where this guys is going to allow you guys to really kind of get control and get the most out of your investment.
Completely. So in this automation series over the next few weeks, please bear that in mind and start to think, how can you use this time? How can you with that better performance, start to be more strategic? But before we run away with ourselves, let's bring it back to smart bidding. And Richard's just taking you through a few important precursors.
Yeah, exactly. Look, it's really impossible for us to detach attribution and automation. And the reason why is think what Huey said about the machine learning aspects. So with learning, it's dependent on the input. And why we're seeing, especially on these kind of first two examples with the Google Tag Manager and measuring cross device, is to make sure that the data that's getting inputted for that smart bidding to work and operate at the highest level is correct. The reason why we say Google Tag Manager is because coding could be very complex and having numerous different codes on pages on different sites. Well, we want Google Tag Manager essentially gives you, I suppose, an interface which consolidate all these to measure them. An important aspect is for cross-device conversions. Look, we know we live online now, between and move across different, across different devices. What we need to make sure as well is that we're measuring across those different devices. And as of March 31st, cross-device conversions automatically populate within the conversion column in AdWords. Only if you have the AdWords conversion tracking, analytics won't do. So make sure you guys have that, which means you're able to, I suppose, measure the cross-device activity. Now, once you're able to do that, then you're able to input this into the mechanism, and to make sure as well that smart bidding is running at the highest standard it can be. And then the final aspect is moving away from last click. Look, last click attribution, it's not to kind of pour any water on it or anything. Like, it was brilliant. It got us very much so to the dance, but there is better options available to us now. As mentioned, we live online, it's a fragmented user journey. So we need to be able to make sure that we're measuring all those different touch points accurately. Again, measuring all these three, understanding measurement and attribution is going to put you guys on the front foot to take advantage of smart bidding.
Completely. I love that point now, Richie, about attribution, because I think they're married together. You can't say them, you've got to say them in the same breath. Attribution, automation, marry them together for that maximum performance. But what we were laughing about and what we were talking about a little bit earlier is how have we got to this? How now are we looking at smart bidding in AdWords? And I think the thing that struck us and the message we want to get over to you, and I'm sure this resonates, is search now unmanageable? Is there too many signals to take into account? Has it become an incalculable sum? Because you look at your keywords and your bids across your whole account, of which I'm sure there are hundreds, thousands. And then you take into account the contextual aspects of those, the time, the location, device, audience, interest, demographics. And then out of all of those, you try and extrapolate the business goals, right? Was it the bounce rate I was interested in? Was it the CPA? Am I looking after market share, impression share, KPIs? Trying and factor all of those different aspects in, it gives me a headache.
Even when they're listed here, and these are just the business specific ones, you understand, I suppose that question, is search becoming unmanageable? When you even see the terms here, and this is just from a business aspect, it seems complex. And then when you think of even just from an AdWords side of things, there's so many areas where you want the data on, whether that's audience, whether that's on location, whether it's on demographics. And then the idea is the more data you have, the more strategic decisions you can make and the better decisions you can make. But because there's so many different aspects that influence that decision, this is what we're saying about, is nearly laughing to ourselves, thinking to be able to do this manually. Because out of all the kind of QBRs and client meetings that we've done, one aspect which hasn't came up in terms of kind of fighting for that extra increased conversion rate is browser. So if you want to have a look at this, so on the keyword buy new toaster, the difference between iOS Chrome users and Android Firefox users is nearly 200%. So people are twice as more likely to convert on iOS Chrome than they are on Android Firefox. We fight tooth and nail for that 2% in terms of conversion rate. So again, to try and keep all these plates spinning and to keep on top of things it really is going to be a difficult task to do by yourself.
And think about your own accounts you're managing now. I can guarantee there'll be, if it's not a keyword, there might be a certain browser or a certain time of day or a certain audience or ad message where you wouldn't realize there is that double or 100% conversion rate difference. And I think we were saying, will we look back and laugh, and if not already, in 2 years' time, and say how we thought we could best set these bids every auction?
Yeah. So using the technology to take advantage of these idiosyncrasies, that's essentially what smart bidding is.
Exactly. And the big and the really unique thing about AdWords is that for every auction, it sets a unique bid using smart bidding. And so that's something that Kent Shoe, Marin, Adobe, even DoubleClick Search won't do. They'll set bids 3-4 times a day. But with AdWords, every single auction, it's looking at those unique signals, building a unique picture of the conversion rate likelihood, and then bidding on it accordingly.
And I think an interesting part of that is if you're in agreement that this data is going to improve performance, why would you only want it a couple of times today? Like it kind of, that way it doesn't make sense. If you can have it at if you're in agreement that it does make a difference, which we know it does, why would not take advantage of it to matter each day? So in terms of what the actual products look like, okay, what are we talking about here? We're really talking about today 3 key ones. So that's CPA, target ROAS, and enhanced cost per click. So again, this is really looking at the difference between machine learning and automated bidding. So automated bidding running off specific rules, where machine learning is taking into consideration, consuming all that data to make that perfect bid to the perfect person at the perfect time.
Yeah, the Holy Trinity, I like to call them.
Yes.
The Holy Trinity.
One aspect, guys, we do want to say here as well, like there is a nice little nexus here, which it doesn't necessarily have to be either or. So we actually have one of the agencies that myself and Hugh look after, use a third-party bidding tool. They like that for having one consolidated bidding strategy across different search platforms and search engines. But they really like the idea of that bidding at each auction. So say if you're using a Kent Shoe, or if you're using Adobe or a DS, you can layer that with enhanced cost per click. And what that does is whatever the bid, say that one of those third parties does, it suggests, and which changes 2 or 3 times a day at best in cases. If you layer that with enhanced cost per click, you get the benefit of smart bidding on top of that, because that will adjust it per auction based on that data. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. So just a nice little workaround there for any guys out there using a third-party solution.
Completely. But look, I mean, in terms of auto bidding, as Richie said, it's nothing new. I mean, a lot of people will be familiar with the likes of Conversion Optimizer. But I think the message from us today is actually algorithmically, it's all changed. And the smart bidding tools we have available as advertisers, marketers today is completely different. I think the best stamp of approval we can show and can demonstrate that with is the Setting Smarter Search Bids white paper. Search for it online. It's publicly available. It's a 30-page AdWords paper about what's changed in smart bidding, how the algorithms changed, more accuracy, improved simulations, more predictive signals. Those are 3 key things. I think that's, for me, one of the most exciting things.
It absolutely is. I think that's a good part of it. Look, it's not going to make for the most enjoyable weekend reading, but I think the 2 clear points here is, regards all these changes, that we want to make sure that it's transparent, and that in some elements that you guys have control on that. So regards, what does that control look like? So the ability to preview and to simulate what and project what the changes would be, and then reviewing those changes once they kind of come into place. So both in the AdWords interface and DoubleClick interface, there's a simulation tool which you can see if whatever target CPA that you guys set, the amount of conversions that will kind of contrive from those as well.
Clicks, cost, impressions, so total forecasting ability.
Yeah, so you're not going to lick your finger and put it up in the air to see what happened. You guys are going to be able to make informed decisions. And I think the key aspect of this is it isn't you go in and you're going to flick a switch and then automatically your account is optimized in your strategy. You do want to make sure that you do have control of it, and it's done in kind of in bits. And I think one of those aspects, and this is something that was really well received when it was rolled out, was regards reviewing. Okay, so again, remember that keyword machine learning, which means there's a process to it until it ramps up till it has the efficient amount of data, and then you get those bids to performs to the best of its capabilities. So within both interfaces, it will actually show you what stage the bidding strategy is at. So when it's in that learning stage, when it's still consuming the data, it will show you that, and it will show you when you come out of that. And if you make any changes based on bids, it will show you what what impact that had over time. So again, a complete control over the forecasting and then reviewing how that goes once it's done. It's no kind of like black box where you don't understand what's going on. Again, I think that transparency and control is the key to why we're seeing such accelerated uptake in the product recently.
Completely. And I think this is probably one of the more celebrated launches that's come recently. And that's around device-specific CPAs. So look, Richie, mobile, desktop, tablet, you can have a different target CPA for each if you're using that target CPA bid strategy. And so what we mean by that is if, say, you have a standard base target CPA of £10, if, to say, you were to have a mobile bid adjustment of plus 10%, then the mobile CPA would be £11. Adversely, if you were to have a desktop bid adjustment of minus 20%, the desktop target CPA would be £8. So immediately, say you have a very slow mobile website, maybe you might want to make that exception. Maybe you have a great user experience on your desktop, maybe you could do it on that. So it takes into account those factors that AdWords can't account for.
Yeah. Again, this is a request which advertisers have been calling for a long time. So when it was rolled out in Q4, it was very much so well received. Drafts and experiments, we can, I suppose, have updates that were well received. This is definitely one aspect. So I think we're going to talk about it specifically regards smart bidding and the process of it now. Yeah. But this is something which we very much so encourage you guys using consistently on your account to test and kind of get the most from it.
And if I was to lay down a challenge to anyone watching today and say one thing I wanted you to go away and take away and trial, it would be drafts and experiments. Set up an A/B test, split a campaign 50-50 and say, right, this half will use the traditional contextual targeting I've set up, and the other half, just for a few weeks, we'll trial target CPA, we'll use that preview review, we'll see how the experiment's going, and then make a decision. Dip your toe in the water, test, see if it works for you and your business.
And great. So, and look, guys, as you're going to be judging performance here, which is one thing we want to take into consideration and keep bear in mind through the whole thing. And then the other aspect is efficiency. Again, with the smart bidding, not having to make those day-to-day changes. Make sure you're using drafts and experiments beyond smart bidding for trialing numerous different things, whether it's your search audience strategy or ad copy or applying negative keywords here. That what difference does that make? So again, what we really want to make sure is that you guys are utilizing and maximizing this, I suppose, this tool.
And just on that, Richie, drafts experiments can be a bit like, oh, I've never heard of that. What's that involve? Actually, it couldn't be easier than ever to set up. If you go into your campaign settings, there should now be a little option saying run an experiment with target CPA bidding. Simple as 2 clicks. Set it up, have a look, see what you find there. And then in terms of actually implementing it, well, again, it's into that bid strategy and just click in, change the bid, manual CPC, target CPA, save. Done. It doesn't have to be difficult at all. And so with that in mind, I think now what we want to leave you with and what we do want to just focus on a little bit are those best practices, because without following these, a lot of people can always be met with a few issues, a few road bumps. Richie mentioned there a couple of the precursors, which we'll touch on now. But we're going to just go through some of our top tips for success with smart bidding. And I guess this would be number 1, Richie. Find a campaign that isn't budget constrained. Often, if you have a status in AdWords saying limited by budget, that could be an issue when trialing smart bidding.
You need that headroom as well for the smart bidding to maneuver around if it's constricted. If there's if you're budget constrained, you're essentially constricted and there's no movement possible essentially for the machine to learn, so to speak.
Yeah, and Richie touched on that learning point there. We'll come back to that in a second because it is crucial to really set up, view and test our whole bid strategy there. Just on that whole not maxed out point, impression share as well. Make sure your campaign isn't at 95 plus impression share. It needs room to experiment, to breathe. It needs to be able to trial and test things. So
they're intertwined.
Exactly. So maybe a brand campaign where you're 100% every time, that might not be the best one to trial smart bidding with. Moving forward on that, ad group conversion data. So we'll touch on this in a second, but it's important that the campaign you test smart bidding with has a good volume of conversion data. And we'll come into the specifics in a second, what that means. But within that, we also need each of those ad groups to have a good volume. So at least 15 conversions in an ad group in the past 30 days for optimum performance here?
Yeah, one of the things we're seeing is advertisers starting to consolidate ad groups and campaigns together, essentially to get more conversion data. More conversions within a specific campaign and ad group means, again, just more information for it to make better decisions off the back of.
Completely. And jumping on from that, look, Richie mentioned cross-device. We're opted in now, but make sure you do have that AdWords conversion tracking tag there. And so look, the final really 3 points we want to make here, and one I think is fundamental. If you're not doing this already, you've missed the boat on search. You might as well go home and pack your bags. Audiences, add audience lists to every single campaign. All visitors, all the different sort of by recency, 7 days, 30 days, basket abandoners, previous customer match lists might be an option here.
Yep.
But the more information it has, the better the tool will work.
Exactly. And the way the let's say we'll prioritize it is based on membership recency, how long in terms of how long they've been a member on that list. Yep. That's how it will understand. So again, if you have somebody who's converted in the last 5 days, if they're worth more value to someone who's converted in the last 30 days, again, it will take them into consideration more. So look, this is one, again, like me and Huey not here trying to convince you about mobile's important. It's the exact same with audience now. Or let's say it's unequivocally has to be rolled out.
Completely. And so again, we've touched on this. Remember, pick the right attribution model. If you haven't had that conversation already, start to think about it. Is last click really the best for your business? Can we do it better? I would argue not, whatever you're doing. So have a look into that. Tracking and optimization, we've touched on this, but make sure you have conversion tracking. If you don't have conversion tracking, you can't come to the dance. It has to be there. Another one we're seeing a lot of recently is the ad rotation settings as well. We'll come on to this in a few weeks' time, but that's important as well. Are you optimizing for conversions? And point 8, the final best practice tip, and I would say the most important, the one people trip up on the most, is the campaign. Has it got that conversion volume? And I've given you some charts there. Let's look at the Target CPA one. For a minimum, the campaign needs to have 30 conversions in the past 30 days. And that's for the learning period we looked at in the bid simulator. The more conversions you have, the quicker that learning period. You can see there, if you have 100, 200, 500 conversions, the bid tool is going to be able to work out all the different signals, build up a profile of your typical converter within a matter of, I'd say, if not days, hours, very quickly. And so those fluctuations that people see when they first start trialing smart bidding, those won't be there. You'll get rid of those speed bumps, those road bumps, and it'll be a much smoother experience. And
again, that's why we're tying into with the previous point of consolidating ad groups to take advantage of that. We know smart bidding and being able to take advantage of all these different nuances is so important. So then in some ways, is it right to kind of sacrifice having campaigns spread out in certain circumstances? We'd probably argue it is in some cases.
So I think my big takeaway today, Richie, would be for massive performance, for massive efficiency gains, start using automation. Today, we've looked at smart bidding. And what my challenge to you would be is to pick a high volume conversion campaign, go away, set up an A/B test, and come back to it in a few weeks' time.
Absolutely, guys. Look, I think to go back to that key point is we want to make sure automation is not a buzzword. You're understanding, and as opposed to something that is not viewed as daunting, it's something that you guys are able to harness effectively and excited. Like at any given time, if you catch me or Huey at the water cooler, we'll burn the ears off your guards automation. We're very much so. Automation first. And again, the main reason is we have clients who have done that process of drafts and experiments. We've seen how well it works. So we're hoping as well that this resonates with you and you can enjoy the same of it.
So guys, that's all from us today. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time with the dynamic search ads and ads automation update. For now, though, I look forward to hearing how your drafts and experiments go. From Automation HQ, thank you very much.
Thanks very much, guys.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.